Today we're going to be learning about rolling over and playing dead. I always have tricks that I'm teaching my dogs. It keeps them learning and keeps them having fun. I usually teach rollover and play dead about the same time because they start the same way. And I typically teach them with a lure because that's the easiest method for me to teach those behaviors. A lure is when I have a food or toy in my hand and the dog is going to follow my hand. And I'm going to use that lure to move their body to get them to do different behaviors. So I find that rollover and play dead is easiest to teach with a lure, but you can definitely teach it with other methods as well. This is Hops. He's my 8-year-old border collie. Hops is going to show the finished product of these tricks because he has been working on them for years. Hops, stand. The first one he's going to demonstrate is playing dead. Hops, bang! Good boy, very good. Hops, bang. Yes, good boy. So he's been working on this trick for years. He knows that it means to fall on his side and lay down and stay still. Release. And he knows to do that until he gets his release cue. Good boy, Hops, good job. Down. Hops, roll. Roll. Good boy. Roll. Good job, Hops, good boy. And rolling all the way over is something that he also knows, and he can do that in both directions. Ro here is my 4-month-old border collie. She is also learning to roll over and play dead, and as you can see, she's learning to give a paw too. I'm always teaching my dogs multiple tricks. It keeps them having fun and keeps them learning. Down. So what I do when teaching rollover and bang is I start with them in a down. Then I bring, good girl, down. I bring the treat toward their rear foot. Sometimes you have to do it really slowly. If you do it too fast, sometimes the dogs will just get up and move. Down, good girl. I'm going to give her little pieces of the treat. I have a handful of kibble here. Down. So each time she stays with her body in a down where she is instead of flopping over, instead of moving over, yes, I'm going to give her a treat. Yes. And I'm going to mark the moment that she hangs on to that position versus doing what she just did and kind of going back into this Sphinx position. The yes tells her that she did something right and that she's earned a treat. It's called a marker cue. You're a good puppy. Down, good girl. So I'm going to bring her head, yes, kind of toward her tail, yes. And reward as we start to get this, yes, this hip flipped. That's my aim here. Good girl. If we can get that hip flipped, then I'm going to, yes, yes. Start to bring the treat gradually toward the floor, yes. And you can see that she's done this a little bit. We're just starting to build up duration here. Yes. So I'm going to now, yes, mark for some stillness. Yes. And see if we can build duration to this behavior. Yes. Good girl. Yes. And before she gets up, release. I'm going to give her permission to get up by giving her her release word. Good girl, Ro. Good girl. And you can see she's all ready to do it again. She's offering me that down behavior. So my lure, which is the treat in my hand, is going to go toward her butt, kind of slowly, and I'll reward when we get that hip flipped. The hip is flipped, then sometimes we need to get them to rock back on this elbow, and the cookie might need to kind of go toward the shoulder before it goes down to the ground. Good girl. Release. Good puppy. Down. As they get better at it, it should become easier. Then if I want to do the full roll over, after, yes, I get that hip flipped and the shoulder and kind of elbow drop to the ground, I'm going to see if I can bring that treat all the way over and get them to roll all the way over. For some puppies, you can assist them just very gently to help them make that final corner there. And then as they get better, I'm going to assist them less. Good girl. Good girl. Yes, good girl. And see if she can kind of finish that on her own a little bit. Good puppy. And then here you see that she's offering me the bang position in the other direction. So I'm going to reward that since we're still building that behavior. Release. Good girl. What a good puppy. Good girl. This is Skeptic, and he is my 3-year-old working Cocker Spaniel. Playing dead and rolling over is something that has been very challenging for him. So we've worked on it for the past few years, but he is still working on it. And a lot of dogs have a behavior that's just hard for them, and this is one of the things that's hard for him. So part of why this is so difficult for Skeptic is holding still has always been hard for him. So this behavior here that you see, especially as he's looking at these cookies, is very challenging. So for him to lie down on his side is even more challenging. So I had to work in very small increments with him. Row, down, good girl. And sometimes at the same time, training the puppy behind me. Good boy. So for him, I'm going to do very small increments, yes. Maybe even rewarding, yes, if his head goes near his back foot without making his body jump to the side. If I move too fast, he'll just kind of flop over like that. Good boy, Skeptic. Yes. So I'm going to mark any little movement, yes. Oh, that was a bad mark on my part. Yes. That we get, there you go, we're going to jackpot that. Good boy. That's my goal, is to get that hip to move over on its side versus being in this Sphinx position. Good boy, Skeptic. Down. So I'm trying to move my hand with the cookies toward his leg here to get him to tip over. Good boy. Yes. Yes. Good boy. Good boy. After we reach that step, now I need this elbow and shoulder to come to the ground. And you can see what's most comfortable for him. Each time he kind of goes back to that Sphinx default position in that down. Row, down. Good boy. Stand. Yes, that time was much easier. I'm going to give him a couple of cookies for that since he moved his hip over right away. Now I'm going to take my hand and move, kind of try to put pressure on him and kind of push his shoulder a little bit as he's just following this cookie. I just want him following that cookie. Yes. And I'm going to reward when we get that elbow dropped. Yes. Good boy. And get him a little bit more flat on the ground. Good puppy, Skeptic. Good dog. Good puppy, row. And reward the puppy behind me. Good boy. Yes, good. Now I'm going to push in a little bit with that treat. Yes. And now I'm going to try, good boy, to get that head to come down to the ground. It's very difficult for him, as you can see, to hold still through this process. You're a good boy. Yes. Mark that moment when I get the hip flipped. Good boy. Good. Stay. Good. And he does know a stay cue. We've got just a little bit of a stay there. Not too bad for a very busy spaniel. Good puppy. Good boy. We'll try it one more time. Good. Stay. Release. Good boy, Skeptic. Good boy. Good puppy. Good job. That is so difficult for him. Then the next trick is the roll over. That's a little bit easier for him because he doesn't have to hold still for it. And we're doing the same steps, trying to get his nose to go toward his butt to get his hip to flip over, then his shoulder and elbow to drop, and then the rest of him to follow. So, yes, we'll mark that moment when we get the hip. Yes, we got the shoulder and elbow, and then I'm going to roll him over, just have him follow my hand, which is called a lure with the treat in it, until he gets all the way over. Good boy. Let's do that once more. We'll get the hip. Yes, and the shoulder and elbow, and then draw his head in a little circle. Good boy, to get him all the way over in that rollover. Good boy, Skeptic. Good puppy. They got me. Good job, buddy. Good job, you. When it has become easy to lure my dog to do the behavior, I'm going to pick a word or a signal, or both. For our play dead behavior, we have a signal and a word. So what I started to do is put the cookies in my hand and give the signal right before I start the lure. And you can see how easy it is. And I want to make sure that it's easy to get the dog into position before I give them the cue or the signal that I want them to learn for this behavior. Release. Good boy. Down. Good. So I'll signal, then start the lure. And dogs are very good at anticipating. Release. So what we hope that they start to do is see the signal and start to do the behavior that they learn comes after that signal. Release. Good boy. Scooch. Good puppy. If I want a verbal cue, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add the cue and then show my dog the lure. Bang! So the new cue, then the old cue, which is the lure. Good boy, release. And you can see he has some very nice duration to this behavior. Good boy. After a little while of doing this repetition, new cue, the signal and the word, then the lure, over and over. New cue, then the old cue. Then I'm going to test my dog. Bang! I'm going to give them the new cue without the lure. And if they guess correctly and they do the behavior, then they're starting to learn the association. They're starting to learn that new cue. If they do not do it, then they just have not learned it yet. And we go back to the training. Release, which would be the new cue, then the old cue, which is the lure. We'll go through the same process for the rollover. I would tell him the new cue, roll, then the old cue, which is the lure. New cue, roll. That's your test. He was able to do it. Good boy. So when you're using a lure to get a behavior, you first make sure that it's easy to get that behavior with the lure. So we know it's easy. Now we add the new cue, bang, then the old cue, the lure, and reward the dog. And then pretty soon they'll pick up that new cue and you don't need the lure anymore. Sometimes if you find that your dog is really, really distracted by the food in your hand, release. You need to go through a step of getting that food out of your hands and only having a signal, down, bang, okay? And then rewarding. Sometimes we need to get the dogs to just follow the hand without the food in it. Sometimes they're so focused on that food that they're not quite as aware of what they're doing. So getting the food out of your hand might be one of the steps that you'll need to go through. Good boy, Hops. Release. Good dog. Let me know in the comments how your training goes, and let me know what tricks you want to see us do next.